February 6, 1788. Massachusetts becomes the sixth state to ratify the U.S. Constitution after pushing through an amendment stating that America, in fact, runs on Duncan. Fucking stupid. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
And joining us once again, coming around the bend, Danny Ramos, everyone.
What's up, everyone? Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for being back with us. Listeners, we are in the middle of our series on spies and espionage. If you're new to the show, what we do each episode is we take a topic from history. One person presents the official government-sanctioned, mainstream media-approved version of events. That didn't feel good to say. And another comes up with a crazy fucking Newsmax bullshit alternate history. And the winner becomes the truth, a notion I've been growing increasingly uncomfortable with over the last several months for reasons. Anyway.
Just the last several months. Interesting.
Well,
you're into Q.
Increasingly uncomfortable over the last several months.
Yeah, you've had a lot of Q appointments that did not come to fruition.
Q appointments. Is that what they call them?
They're actually called Q meetups.
Yeah, Q meetups.
I guess predictions would have been the word, but I think appointments has a friendlier tone.
Sure, a friendlier tone. And that's really what Q is all about.
Yeah, they all hang out in a lobby at a Marriott.
Everyone just vibing, and not a vaccinated person in sight. Usually we go off into some weird off-topic bullshit up top, and we didn't this time until we kind of did. Lately, it's been all about Q, which is the name of our sister podcast. All about Q,
and a sitcom on CBS that I think is not going to last.
It's a very delayed spin-off of Dharma and Greg, I believe.
Yeah, but it's also a little bit waiting for Godot because Q never shows up.
It's starring Topher Grace.
It's perfect. It's a 4-quadrant hit. Fans of Godot, fans of experimental theater,
fans of sitcoms, fans of Q.
People who believe the Democrats are lizard people child predators.
People who aren't fans of Q, maybe, since Q never shows up.
Yeah, that's true. People who are fans of Schadenfreude. Which is
it's that the way that Starship Troopers threads the needle between being, it's based on a book that's actual fascist propaganda and it's a satire of fascist propaganda, but both people like the movie. Both people who are fascist and not fascist are like, yeah. It's just one of them is wrong about the intent of the director, but right about the intent of the writer of the book.
Yeah, which is fucked up. Also, you said Starship Troopers, and I kept thinking Super Troopers. I'm like, that's based on a book? First of all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All the Broken Lizard movies, weirdly, based on books.
Before Joseph Heller wrote Catch-22, he wrote Super Troopers.
Slam and Salmon, I think, was, Aldous Huxley, maybe?
Yeah.
Virginia Woolf was Beer Fest. That's what it was.
Club Dread was the Confederacy of Dunces guy.
What? I don't care what his name is. He fucking sucks. Anyway, last time on the show we discussed Aldrich Ames. Results for that are still pending. So we'll be lifting the flap on our kimono for that one later.
Ooh, sexy.
Totally the sexiest thing. Just three bearded dudes. Wait, you're not bearded. Damn it.
No, don't tell him. I could have easily just gave it
Sorry.
just went with it.
Yeah, no. We'll pretend you have a beard. It's an audio medium.
Yeah, I give beard vibes.
I'll layer in beard sounds. Anyway, this week we were discussing Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Zach, you will be doing the actual history.
Yep.
And Danny, you'll be doing the alternate.
Mm-hmm.
So, Zach, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Yeah. So Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were famously a pair of spies in the 20th century America, but we should start at the beginning. Julius.
You're probably wondering how we got here.
Yeah.
Freeze frame.
Probably, I think if you have like a moderate knowledge of history, you've probably heard of the Rosenbergs.
Mm-hmm.
But Julius Rosenberg was born May 12th, 1918. Ethel, née Greenglass, was born September 28th, 1915. They're both born to Jewish families, both born in New York City. Julius's parents were actually immigrants from Russia, Jewish immigrants from Russia. I don't know what would cause Jewish people to immigrate from Russia in the 1910s. What could possibly have been going on?
Or, any of the several decades prior to that.
Sure. Or after.
Yeah.
Regardless, both Julius and Ethel ultimately ended up in the Young Communist League, USA, during the Depression.
Communist Kids, as it was originally called.
Another sitcom.
That's the Russian version of fucking Stranger Things.
Ethel wanted to be an actress and a singer. Didn't really happen for her. Julius went ahead to City College of New York. They met through the Communist League and were married in 1939. Julius went ahead and finished his career at Community College in New York with an electronic engineering degree. They had a couple sons, and at the same time, Julius went to work for the Army Signal Engineering Corps, starting in 1940.
Sorry, I know it's core, and it made me think of the Crypt Keeper reading that.
I am reading and definitely Signal Corps.
Signal
Both
Corps.
of those words. Not signal, not corpse. Signal Corps. Regardless, he went to work as an engineer inspector. Like I said, he had a degree in electrical engineering. He was eventually fired in 1945 after they discovered his affiliation with communist groups in his youth. Though a number of things happened between 1940 and 1945 that are of interest. So based on what we know now, and a lot of, we have the benefit of hindsight, a lot of these documents have been declassified on both sides. Julius was recruited by the USSR in 1942 by a spy master named Semyon Semenyov. Again, these are Russian names. It's going to be some guessing.
Yeah, we should have given the standard Russian name warning at the beginning of the whole fucking spy miniseries.
Listen, the guy's first and last name are the same, except the last name has an OV on the end. So it's like Chris Christopherson, I guess, or something like that.
Well, it's the Soviet Union. There's limited resources.
Exactly.
Everyone has to have only enough names to go around.
Once again, Semyov was somebody he met through his the communist groups he was involved in as a youth. Eventually, a fellow named Alexander Fekelsov was going to take over as his handler 2 years after he was recruited in 1944. Fekelsov is an important resource because he did write a book about some of his work during the Cold War. So basically, while Rosenberg worked for the Army, he provided quite a number of documents on American military tech. He recruited, more importantly, a lot of people. He actually was seemingly skilled at recruiting other defectors, at least half a dozen, maybe up to 10 people that he talked into basically giving away intelligence, including intel on like upcoming U.S. fighter jets. But the big break came when Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, he was discovered to be working as a member of the Manhattan Project, and Rosenberg was directed to recruit him, which he did successfully. Eventually, along with a second source named Russell McNutt.
All right.
What is the recruitment process of becoming a spy? It's like, hey, man, we got nice suits. We have insurance.
Oh, I'd be very surprised if spies had good insurance, since it's a...
They'll disavow your knowledge.
Yeah.
If that counts as insurance.
It also just sounds... It's one of those things that sounds so like romantic and adventurous on its face, but as we've seen in some of these stories already, it's full of like sad or fucked up people doing a job that requires them to lie constantly, so it kind of ruins their lives.
Do you like the taste of cyanide? Well, you might want to die.
I mean, I think it's also like recruitment it varies depending on like what a person's weak point is, or if they just like, if you know them to have sort of like, especially in the Cold War, ideological disagreements with whatever country they're based in. And then sometimes it's money.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's actually money.
Yeah, it's regardless. I think it's like an inglorious work at this time, but Rosenberg, for recruiting Russell of the Manhattan Project, received apparently a $100 bonus. Seems a little light on the USSR's part. And the USSR may have received information on uranium processing from this fella. So, man, I don't know.
That's just like, you get like a thing of baked lays, basically, or like a free, we'll take you to Subway for their famous not tuna.
Yeah, here's some Kirkland signature pants.
Yeah, here's $20, go to Ross.
Despite so basically no official information about the Manhattan Project was shared with Russia during its development in World War II. Britain got some information, and some of our closer allies, but not Russia. Despite that, Russia had their first successful nuclear test in 1949. We'll talk about how much the Rosenbergs information did or did not have to do with that a little down the line. Mm-hmm. So eventually, a man named Klaus Fuchs was discovered as a leak on the Manhattan Project. So clearly there were a number of people involved that were, letting information out.
Yeah.
He identified a man who was his courier for the information to the Russian government. And that courier had also been working with David Greenglass. And he flipped on David Greenglass, and Greenglass flipped on Julius. So that's how Julius Rosenberg was found out, as kind of this sort of fellow who was, co-opting a lot of people into spying for the Russians at the time. He also revealed that a Russian consul in New York named Antonov Yakovlev was an important part of Julius's network of contacts in New York and in the Manhattan Project. There was another fellow named Martin Sobel who attempted to flee to Mexico for a time and changed his name, but unable to move on without a passport, was eventually apprehended and, brought back. he would later write about his experience with Julius Rosenberg, but we'll get to that in a bit. Regardless, it's pretty clear that the whole thing was blown wide open. On July 17th of 1950, Julius Rosenberg was arrested. The prosecution wanted some information on Ethel, largely because they thought it would get leverage over Julius if they had information against Ethel that could, theoretically put her in jail. They had 2 young children at this time. Quite young. I no more than 4 or 5. I think they were born in 43, 47, something like that. So 7 and 4, something like that at this time. They're still alive today. So,
Yeah, that shows you, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're younger than the last 2 presidents of the United States. So they wanted leverage on Ethel to flip Julius, and they ultimately got David Greenglass, who you might remember is the fellow who worked on the Manhattan Project, but also Ethel's brother.
Yeah. Yay.
And his wife, Ruth, to modify their story, where originally he said he transferred the information to Julius by just handing it off in a street corner. They changed their story to say that Ethel was actively copying and taking notes on classified information at the Rosenbergs' home. After this happened, Ruth's charges were dropped. So that was nice for them. And Ethel was arrested after she was brought to a grand jury. She did not answer any questions, took the fifth the whole time, and was arrested thereafter. Neither Ethel nor Julius ever gave any additional names when questioned.
That's a real spy MVP right there.
Yeah. And I mean, her brother. But I also don't know what they were holding over him and his wife, and it's weird and awful and complicated. Yeah.
So on March 6, 1951, the trial begins. David was the key witness here. He claims he gave sketches of the Fat Man bomb to Rosenberg. The little boy bomb was a little different in how it went off, but this was the Fat Man bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. And that Ethel types notes with the information intact. You could see an approximation of these sketches. They don't seem very informative to me, but they're available online, so I don't think they're super, super useful into creating a nuclear bomb.
When you say it like that, yeah, it seems like there'd be more steps.
Yeah. That's how everyone's doing it these days. Just go into those sketches.
As for the Rosenbergs themselves, during the entire trial, they held the Fifth Amendment the whole time. They basically remained defiant. They said as little as possible. They did not, they just did not partake, basically. They were like, I take my right not to self-incriminate, and that was the whole fucking thing. On March 29th, they were sentenced to death under the Espionage Act of 1917. It's worth noting here that a big part of this whole trial was one Roy Cohn.
Okay.
Yeah. Roy Cohn would later claim that he was instrumental in pushing for the death penalty in this case, and also arranged a number of the people involved in the prosecution. Roy Cohn, I don't know if we'll ever do an episode about him, but he's an interesting fellow. Just a quick rundown. A few years later, he would work with Joseph McCarthy during McCarthyism and, the blacklist, all that stuff. A few years after that, he would serve as personal counsel to both Presidents Nixon and Reagan. While he worked for Reagan, he befriended one Roger Stone, a person you might still know about today. He also represented Rupert Murdoch, and while he represented Rupert Murdoch, he encouraged President Reagan to push Murdoch's interest and change certain television laws to allow for different kinds of news. He also was the personal counsel for one Donald Trump, who considered him a close friend and mentor. So Roy Cohn, basically did a lot of shit.
Yeah. I mean, also, I think the only person we've talked about on this podcast who's a character in Angels in America.
Well, we've also talked about Ethel Rosenberg, who is a character in Angels in America. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
In the following months, there was a campaign for clemency for the Rosenbergs, most notably for Ethel, who was obviously less involved than Julius was.
Even on the basis of this story, which is rather suspect. Yeah.
So while some Americans supported it, it did not gain a huge amount of popular ground. The ACLU did not take up the cause. And despite both the Rosenbergs being Jewish, there was no major American Jewish organization that expressed, support for them, in part because, well, I think being a Jewish person in America in the 1950s was difficult, and you didn't want to, sympathize with Soviets.
Yeah.
When you're trying to become, a legitimate part of society. But regardless,
Well, and especially when so much of the very hardline anti-socialist, anti-communist, and anti-Soviet rhetoric was also anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And those things were, to a lot of people on the right, very closely tied together.
Yeah.
Especially in that case.
But some people did take up the cause of the Rosenbergs more vocally. Most notably, a lot of foreign newspapers were adamant that they should, pleaded that the Rosenbergs should have a lesser sentence. Pope Pius pleaded to Eisenhower to reduce the sentence, as did a number of other very famous people, including Albert Einstein, Bertolt Brecht, Frida Kahlo, Dashiell Hammett, Fritz Lang, Pablo Picasso, Jean-Paul Sartre. And Jean-Paul Sartre said the trial was, quote, a legal lynching which smears with blood a whole nation. By killing the Rosenbergs, you have quite simply tried to halt the progress of science by human sacrifice, magic, witch hunts, sacrifices. We are here getting to the point. Your country is sick with fear. You are afraid of the shadow of your own bomb. So that was Jean-Paul Sartre's take on the Rosenberg situation. Ultimately, Eisenhower did not commute the sentence, and all appeals failed.
I mean, knowing the limited amount I do know about Eisenhower, I do have a hard time picturing him being like, oh shit, Sartre said that? Oh no.
Pass.
Yeah, he's definitely I don't know.
He's a weird figure.
He is a weird figure. He is a strange figure. He's like a person, I think, of character, but, in a way that Republicans aren't anymore. I think he was maybe the last real Republican of character who was president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're talking about Eisenhower?
Yeah. Yeah, because the next one after him would have been Nixon.
Yes.
So, and we know how that went. Gerald Ford doesn't count.
Yeah, Gerald Ford basically doesn't count. There could be I think there should be a comedy movie about Gerald Ford accidentally falling into the presidency, because he's the only guy who was never elected VP or president. He just ended up being president. like record scratch. Yeah, that's me.
You're probably wondering how I got here. I mean, this is
wasn't he like really clumsy also?
He was famously mocked for falling down a couple times on SNL. Now, does that mean he's clumsy? I don't know. I think it might just mean that SNL just made fun of like one time he fell down.
SNL never repeats a bit unless it's rooted in some sort of reality.
Yeah.
Well, Gerald Ford, that's a topic for another day. This was before his time, though in his time, because he was alive. Regardless. So at the time, the federal prison had no execution chamber. So the Rosenbergs were sent to Sing Sing in upstate New York for execution. There were some minor delays and some slight time changes to avoid the Jewish Sabbath. And the execution ultimately occurred on June 19th, 1953.
That's a very fast process. I mean, compared to sort of how long it takes to go in like capital cases, which I'll go on record speaking for this podcast, shouldn't be a thing. But to go from like the actual sentence being passed in court to an execution could be decades. To do that in 3 years, was it? Or even less after the trial is insanely fast.
They wanted to make a point. They're like, just in case you were thinking about being a spy.
Yeah. I mean, probably, because I'm sure they all thought the Cold War was constantly like coming to a head.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, especially ghoulish that it moved that quickly.
Yeah. So they obviously rushed that through. It's in terms of the execution itself, a little bit morbid for a moment. Julius's execution went sort of as expected. They deliver 3 shocks was the way it was done. This was the electrocution method. Julius was found dead after the normal 3 shocks. Ethel, while unconscious, her heart was still beating. So they delivered an additional 2 shocks. Witnesses say that smoke rose from her head at the end of the execution method. So they were the only 2 people executed for espionage during the entirety of the Cold War by the United States, at the very least. There was there was one woman prior to Ethel Rosenberg who was executed by the federal government, and one woman who was executed only a couple months after her in the same year, 1953. Those were the only women ever executed by the federal government in the 20th century and in history until at the time of this recording last month, when Donald Trump sped up the execution or urged the execution of a woman on January 13th. So after Ethel Rosenberg and another woman who died about the same time, the first time in 67 years the federal government has executed a woman was last month, which is sort of interesting.
And one of the things that sort of got lost in everything else that was going on.
Yeah. So as far as how useful their spying actually was in terms of, Russia creating a nuclear bomb, the answer generally seems to be between either very little or not at all.
Yeah, I looked up the picture you were talking about, and honestly, it looked like a fucking flower to me. So then again, I am also not a nuclear scientist.
There were already predictions prior to this that the Russians would theoretically figure out how to have their own bomb in 5 years. They managed to do it in 4. Whether the Rosenbergs and other spying had any influence on that is somewhat unclear. A couple of their handlers have talked about this after declassification and time passed and said the information we got was either minorly useful or not at all useful.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we would have done just as well without it. So it seems like, for the most part, this was much ado about nothing. Like they didn't. I don't think they changed much in the larger picture.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of declassified documents on both sides of the Cold War since then. Apparently, Julius Rosenberg's code name was Liberal.
That's. I didn't realize the USSR was a bunch of people on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah, it was a shit lib. No, yeah. So in 2001, Greenglass, Ethel's brother, he testified that, or he said that his testimony about Ethel typing notes was fabricated and persuaded. That even it might have been his own wife typing notes. He didn't remember. But he was not especially remorseful. He was like, my wife is more important to me than my sister or my mother or my father. And she was the mother of my children. So he sort of stood by the decision he made there. Yeah.
Yeah. Folks, sometimes we talk about a story on the show, and it's just a fucking tragedy all around. So, should have given that disclaimer up front.
Yeah, the Russian name disclaimer, and also this will be a tragedy.
I forgot should have remembered my disclaimer boilerplate.
The grand jury testimony was also released in 2008 or so, and the testimony conflicted. In some versions, Ruth Greenglass typed the notes. In some versions, it was Ethel. The later versions, it was Ethel. So again, that seems like coerced testimony. KGB documents that have been declassified paint Julius as an effective agent and Ethel as only supportive but not active. The children of Julius and Ethel were initially sent to the grandparents, but eventually adopted by a high school teacher of theirs, Abel Mirapol, who was also the writer of the song Strange Fruit.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, which is an interesting, weird little thing. Since then, their children and grandchildren have campaigned for legal exoneration of both their parents, but especially Ethel, for a number of years. In 2017, Senator Elizabeth Warren sent outgoing President Barack Obama a letter urging him to posthumously exonerate Ethel Rosenberg, though that did not happen. Yep, and they've been represented in a number of fictional and nonfiction portrayals. Most famously, as we mentioned earlier, Angels in America, the HBO adaptation of which has Ethel's ghost haunting Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn was played by Al Pacino, and Ethel was played by Meryl Streep in that particular version. Roy Cohn obviously died of AIDS in the 1980s as a possibly closeted gay man.
Working for Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, Zach, thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
Danny, whenever you're ready to jump in.
Yeah,
now, to set the scene, everyone's dead. So
Oh my gosh, yeah. That is important history to know. Obviously, I'm here to tell the truth, the actual history. So yes, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. So a big misconception about those two is that they are dead. In fact, they are not dead at all. They're actually time travelers, and they have come back recently because they assisted in taking over the U.S. government. But I'm going to get to that. I'll get to that later. Much like many other important figures, like the scientists of the Manhattan Project, the U.S. were like, "Yo, these scientists are really good. We need to grab them for this. These spies are really good. We need to cover them up and kill them," air quotes, so we can use them for future projects. So we're going to get into Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, but that's kind of setting the scene here. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Julius was a very kind man growing up, very, very prestigious, had a great pencil mustache, always wore suits. Coincidentally enough, inspired Ricky Ricardo in I Love Lucy.
Okay.
Then we have Ethel. Ethel being so in love with Julius, wanted to be an actress, wanted to be a singer, was in small improv comedy groups in New York City, which yes, she actually was so good that she later created the format for Second City later on in Chicago 30 years. Yes, 40, 50 years later. So she wanted to be an actress. And after many failed attempts at trying to land a big sitcom, like I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, I Married Joan, she was just getting extras in the background. She didn't want to be an extra. She wanted to be a main character, obviously. So she had heard Julius was thinking about being a spy. And he was like, hey, I hear they have good insurance. So I'm
PTO.
Yeah, they have good PTO. Cyanide's never been that bad of a tasting thing to me. So
wait, so he's had cyanide before?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was the 40s. It was the 30s.
Yeah, it was a
cyanide,
different time.
Yeah, cyanide was in the wall paint. We don't know.
Honestly, plausible.
So she's actually the one that convinced him to be a spy. She was like, you know what? This could be our big shot to be really famous. Little did she know the whole point of being a spy is that no one knows you're a spy. So that was a big misconception on her part. But
yeah. Or you're hiding in plain sight. I don't know.
Yeah. So they ended up, becoming spies for the Soviet Union. And they were accused of providing top secret information about like radar, sonar, jet propulsion. But what they don't really say is that they were perfect at stealing emails. And emails, what is the big topic of emails? Hillary Clinton's emails. And what does Rosenberg mean? Rosenberg, the last name, means mountain of roses. What color is rose? Red. It also means Red Mountain. It's all coming together here. They were hired on by the Republican Party to steal Hillary Clinton's emails. So they're time travelers. Not only is Julius Rosenberg an electrical engineer, but they were also death by electrocution. We've all seen Back to the Future. What sends people through time travel? Electricity and fast cars. Well,
okay, yeah.
This is mostly electricity on this
and the
end.
Tracy Chapman song "Fast Car."
I mean, also I've seen Frankenstein too, and generally, what brings corpses back to life?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
exactly.
I've seen both Home Alones, and I've seen a man's skeleton be exposed.
What makes your skeleton come out of your body for just a split second, so your body is transparent?
Yes.
While you're Daniel Stern holding.
That's his name. I almost said Larry David. I'm like, that's not it.
Zach had mentioned that Ethel's hair or head was steaming. What was the actual verbiage that you used? Smoking. Yes, and we all know that is a byproduct of time travel.
Okay.
So they were sent to the future. Now these are concurrent spies that the U.S. government uses for big events, stealing Hillary Clinton's emails. I didn't want to say it, but yes, QAnon. Big part. They love Q. Julius and Ethel love Q.
Oh no,
love Q. They see
They
Q.
were so sympathetic before.
They're big patriots.
Psycho nuts.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look closely at David Greenglass's sketch of the nuclear weapon design, is it not a Q? Is it not a Q at this point?
Okay, it does actually kind of fucking look a little bit like a Q, but that is coincidence.
I'm only telling facts here. It's so much so if you even go into the Rosenbergs bagel shop here in Denver, Colorado, it's written on the walls. It's literally written on the walls. Just Ethel and Julius are QA non-conspirators.
It's written on the wall in the bathroom if you go back and check it out.
Yeah, there's a QR code there in the bathroom, and if you just hover your phone over it, it'll just take you to the QAnon site.
Oh man, it's Denver's New York bagel shop, and that it costs like $17 for a Loxon bagel. We're not fucking sponsored by them. We could be after that ad copy, though.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yes, they were deemed too powerful at their job. The U.S. government knew immediately that they were spies. They were like, "Whoa, we're getting all these people lined up around their house, around the corner, and in the front it just says Scientology. We can't have this." So they were big inspirers. They inspired a lot of things. They inspired Scientology on how their recruitment policy. Ethel inspired Second City. They're huge.
The recruitment policy of "Do you have money?" and are bad with it.
Yeah, how about you tell us a big secret? We'll hold it in a little file, and if you tell anyone on us, we're gonna spill the beans. So they were big influencers of their time. They were recruiting people like crazy, left and right. Entire neighborhoods were just Soviet flags everywhere. The U.S. government was like, you know what? Instead of throwing these people in prison, let's use them to our benefit. Mm-hmm. So that's how they became these time-traveling spies to manipulate government acts or to change course in history, to create some news. That's really a big part of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Okay. They were not only part of this espionage case, but they also enjoyed their two children. Those were honest mistakes, really. They really wanted to focus on this whole spy thing, but with spy comes great lovemaking. So they had their two sons, Michael and Robert.
That is one of the listed benefits.
I mean,
it's a bit like visiting like an herbal supplement store at this point.
I mean, we've all seen James Bond. He can't do a case without making some love.
I mean, my memory of James Bond movies is not always that great, but I've never seen anything that hints he's actually good at sex. He just does it a lot. Sorry.
I mean, he at the end of The World Is Not Enough. Mm-hmm. He is having sex with one Dr. Christmas Jones. Mm-hmm. And he says verbally on camera, audibly, I thought Christmas only comes once a year. So that implies that he has brought her to orgasm multiple times.
And Christmas Jones looks him back in the eyes and goes, ha ha ha, very funny.
Well, it's Denise Richards, so
yes.
Oh man.
She's just like, that was 10 minutes.
I saw that when it came out and I was just like, I don't get that. I'm sure I will eventually.
I will say for Denise Richards, who was with which is the Sheen that was on 2 1/2 Men?
Charles
Sheen. I think Pierce Brosnan is an upgrade.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it'd be rough if he wasn't.
Wait, are you saying that you like Charles Sheen more than Pierce Brosnan?
No, other way around.
Other way
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
Pierce
hold on.
Brosnan adopted some kids from his wife's previous marriage and was a great dad. And yeah, Pierce Brosnan.
Wait, are we talking about
is a
Mrs.
PSA?
Doubtfire?
No, actually, yes. Like PSA, Pierce Brosnan, genuinely good guy.
Wow.
If you read about his personal life.
Wow.
Okay, it does. To be fair, though, the bar set by Charlie Sheen is not like
Oh no, I'm not talking about Charlie Sheen bar. I'm talking about like normal human bar.
normal. Okay, yeah. Okay, just making sure.
Wow. He was, yeah. Pierce Brosnan took the role of Mrs. Doubtfire. He's like, hey, I just want to make sure, can we still do that adopting kid thing? I want to make sure that's in all my movies because I'm a good person.
Yeah, he adopts the best traits of all his characters.
He's a method actor.
Yeah, that's what method actors are, the most charitable people in the world.
And his first wife and his first daughter both died tragically of cervical cancer. He had a tough old time for a while there.
Wow.
Oh, yikes.
Here we go, Zach, bringing in the tragedy once again.
Yep, that's our show. The fucking tragedy hour.
Yeah, I had no idea this was a murder podcast.
Yes. I mean, it's not. It's cancer.
It's not me.
I mean, we also do discuss many murders. Oh, man. But Danny, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I also want to point out that Julius Rosenberg was only 5'5".
Short King, another
Short king.
That
Another
could
short
have
king.
been,
on the
I did
show.
not look up his accurate or his weight, so that could be accurate.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, as a person who is 5'6",
Short.
more of these.
You could have accomplished so much, Brian.
I
You had
know.
1 inch on him.
I could have, and yet.
And Ethel was 6'7", just throwing that out there.
Oh.
6'7", 71-inch
You know
vertical
what?
leap.
That's a good marriage. She was taller and older than him.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's
What a rare marriage that is.
We stand a Jewish Ricky Ricardo.
and Wilt Chamberlain also. Listeners, before we move on to judgment, I just want to say, if you ever want to write us a letter to ask us a question, leave us a comment, tell us your secrets, you can do that at revisionistpodcast.com. Just click on the contact page, and there's a chance we'll read your letter on air. So, that's a feather in your cap. You can also find us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, theoretically. I don't know. And lastly, you can, if you are so inclined, things are tough right now, you can pledge your support to the show on Patreon, which helps us defray the cost of hosting for as little as $1 a month. There are, I will say, worthier causes to put your money towards right now. Danny, you have a unique Twitch channel going on.
Yes. For anyone listening to the podcast, I am a associate developer relations engineer for New Relic, and I have a Twitch channel at twitch.tv/MuyDanny, MUY. And if you're interested or at all interested or have been interested in software development or programming, I do daily coding on Twitch and just talk about the tech world and tech things, and occasionally we'll play chess on there. So if you're into that too.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, you were telling me about that, and I only really know Twitch for streams of Fall Guys, basically. And among, so I didn't know they did
mostly. Yeah, I didn't know that there were coding channels on there.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I didn't know that either until I got this job, and they were like, "Hey, you seem cool. Do you want to do this on Twitch?" I was like, I will look up what to do, and yes.
Hell yeah. Zach, you also co-host another podcast. That is a very good podcast that we should tell people about.
Debatable. I host another podcast. That's accurate. Everything else is subjective. But if you like this podcast, you might like it. It's called The Movie Trap. It's myself, my friend Russell Carlson, and Chris Boroff. The premise essentially is that we take a theme for a trilogy of movies that each of us pick. And after we have each chosen our riffs on that theme, we vote on who chooses the next theme, and so on and so forth. It's sort of a game show format. But yeah, it's basically a movie discussion podcast with, a sort of gamified aspect. So if that's interesting to you, Brian's been on a few episodes, and yeah.
I was on for example, I was on, I think the series was Bad Cops or just
ACAB. Yeah.
And I was a guest on the Police Academy episode.
Yeah.
And then that was also the other ones in that series were Stanford Prison Experiment and
Blind Spotting.
Yes. So you get a wide variety of movies to choose from.
I think right now we're going through our movies with double casting.
Mm-hmm.
We record these very far in advance. But I think we're going through our movies with double casting segment, which could be anything from Dead Ringers, which is the David Cronenberg movie where Jeremy Irons plays drug-addicted gynecologists, to The Crumps, which does not show up, but something like The Crumps was...
Okay, I was wondering if that was in the series.
Yeah.
Jesus. Awesome. Yeah, listeners, as for me, comedy's not really a thing I'm doing right now because if you don't know, I won't ruin your day.
That would be crazy if people didn't know.
Pandemic.
Yeah, you're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
What's going on here? But yeah, you can follow me on
a co-ed video. I've seen co-ed videos.
COVID. I hardly know her.
I mean, it's not appropriate for children, sure, but
oh man. You can find me on social media. Just search for apparently Brian. Wait, I deleted all my social media. Fuck. I can't. Goddamn.
Wow.
Delete that. Jesus Christ. Like I said, scatterbrained right now.
No, leave it in.
You know what, listeners? We've also been, like we said, things are hard right now for everyone. And if you have some extra money, instead of throwing it our way, you can throw it to a good cause. There is a group called We Cycle, WEE, that buys diapers and other baby paraphernalia and distributes it to people who can't afford it. And so if you want to throw some money their way, that's a really good cause. But yeah, that brings us to Judgment this time. And I love a good time traveler story because it opens up a lot of possibilities for the alternate history. This is also the first time I've judged since the attempted coup, and part of me is like, man, fuck you, not fuck you, YOU, fuck Q, as in QAnon. So I think for that reason,
fuck coup.
Yeah, fuck coup, and listen to The Coup on Spotify.
The Coup is good. Yeah.
Yes, The Coup, good. Actual coup, bad. So, anyway, I think I'll cast my vote for the actual history this time. But listeners, voting is now open on Patreon, and check out our Instagram story the Wednesday, the 17th, for the final round of voting.
That's my birthday, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hey.
Happy pre-birthday. And my birthday was just a few days ago. So, listeners, if you want to give us a birthday present, write a review on your podcast service of choice.
Or really a blowjob.
Or write a written reviews, especially are great. Or the other stuff I
don't expect that to be delivered. Listeners.
I don't accept that. Also,
it would be an awkward circumstance. It was a joke. I spoke before I thought, and I apologize to everybody.
Damn old Ethel and Julius were at it again.
I feel like our listeners are more feet people anyway. In fact, that's our latest Instagram poll. So please don't vote on that. Anyway, I'm gonna pull out of this before I try to guess more of our listeners' fetishes. Danny, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's always great to hang out with you too.
Yeah. Zach, thank you as always.
Thank you, Brian. If you did offer me a blowjob, it would be weird, and I would say no. So, just to be clear,
we were so close to just blowing right past it.
Redoubling on how that was a joke. Obviously, I think anybody who's a normal adult would be like, "Oh, he's kidding."
Yeah, no, totally.
No, I'm filling out my FedEx form right now to send one over.
FedEx form. You know what? If that is how you understand blowjobs, go nuts. if you think you can mail one,
oh, if you send us the monetary worth of one blowjob, we will accept it.
Yeah, go to our Patreon and type out however much you think you would pay for oral sex, and then just donate that to us. Yeah. And then we could never speak of it again. For everyone here at The Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers. I'm not going to talk about blowjobs again.
No, not at least that's going to be behind our paywall. Have a good time.
Have a good day.